What if someone you trusted completely, a neighbor, a doctor, a family friend, was hiding something so dark, so calculated, that the people closest to them had absolutely no idea? These aren't fictional stories. These are real cases, real victims, real killers who, in some cases, were never caught. Today, we're going inside 5 of the most chilling, most baffling true crime cases in modern history. Cases that shocked investigators, cases that changed laws, and cases where the truth is still out there. Stay with me, because once you hear these stories, you won't be able to stop thinking about them. Welcome back to the channel where we dig into the darkest corners of history, science, and human behavior. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe. We upload new deep dives every week. Let's begin. It's 1968, Northern California. A killer begins sending letters to local newspapers, taunting police, bragging about his crimes, and including coded ciphers that he claimed contained his identity. He called himself the Zodiac. Over a period of roughly 2 years, the Zodiac is confirmed to have killed at least 5 people. He himself claimed 37. The truth likely lies somewhere in between, and we may never know the full number. What made the Zodiac unlike any killer before him wasn't just the violence. It was the performance. He wanted to be famous. He wanted people to be afraid, and he succeeded on both counts. The letters began arriving in July 1969, sent simultaneously to 3 Bay Area newspapers: the San Francisco Chronicle, the San Francisco Examiner, and the Vallejo Times-Herald. Each letter contained a portion of a coded cipher, 408 symbols total. The killer demanded the newspapers print the ciphers on their front pages, or he would go on a killing rampage. They published them. A high school teacher and his wife cracked the cipher within days. The message inside was deeply disturbing, describing the thrill of killing and expressing a belief that his victims would become his slaves in the afterlife. But the cipher that supposedly contained his name, that one went unsolved for over 50 years. A team of code breakers finally cracked it in 2020. But his name was not inside, just more taunting. Police received thousands of tips. They had suspects. They had partial DNA from the letters. But the Zodiac was careful, almost impossibly careful for the time. He communicated through the media, not through witnesses. He left no consistent pattern in his choice of victims. And then at some point in the early 1970s, he simply stopped. No arrest, no confession, no closure for the families of his victims. The Zodiac case remains officially open to this day. February 9th, 2004. A snowy night in Haverhill, New Hampshire. A 21-year-old nursing student named Maura Murray crashes her car into a snowbank on Route 112. A nearby resident sees the crash and offers to call police. Maura tells him not to, that she already called. She hadn't. When police arrived just 15 minutes later, Maura was gone, and she has never been found. On the surface, Maura was a high-achieving college student at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. She was a member of the Army ROTC. She was athletic and, by most accounts, a dedicated student. But in the days before her disappearance, something had shifted. She had sent an email to her professors telling them there had been a death in the family and she would be away for a week. But there had been no death. She had made several calls to ski resorts, apparently planning a trip. She had withdrawn $280 in cash from an ATM. It looked to many investigators like Maura Murray had planned to disappear. The question that has haunted this case for over 20 years is simple. Where did she go in those 15 minutes? The road she crashed on is remote. It was nighttime. It was snowing. The nearest house was hundreds of meters away. Some witnesses reported seeing a truck near the crash site. Others reported nothing unusual at all. Was she picked up by a stranger? Did she walk into the woods? Was someone waiting for her? Her father spent years searching the area. Authors have written books about the case. Podcasters have dedicated hundreds of hours to it. Investigators have named persons of interest, but no one has ever been charged. To this day, Maura Murray remains a missing person. She would be 41 years old. BTK. 3 letters that stood for bend, torture, kill. The name a serial killer chose for himself as he terrorized the city of Wichita, Kansas for over 30 years. Dennis Rader killed 10 people between 1974 and 1991. He sent letters to police and newspapers taunting them, and then he stopped, not because he was caught, but seemingly because he chose to. For over a decade, he lived as a normal man, a husband, a father, a church president, and then he made one catastrophic mistake. What makes the BTK case so deeply unsettling isn't just the crimes themselves, it's who Dennis Rader was when he wasn't killing. He was a compliance officer for the city of Park City. He was known in his neighborhood as strict but normal. He was president of his local Lutheran church congregation. His family had no idea. His community had no idea. He had, for all appearances, completely compartmentalized 2 entirely separate lives for 30 years. After a long silence, Rader began communicating with police again in 2004, seemingly craving the attention and notoriety he had once enjoyed. He sent letters, he sent clues, and then, in a moment of extraordinary arrogance, he asked police a direct question through a local television station. Could police trace a floppy disk if he sent one? Police responded publicly, no, they could not trace it. They lied. Rader sent a floppy disk shortly after. Forensic investigators found metadata on it linking it to the Christ Lutheran Church and to a name, Dennis. He was arrested in February 2005, 31 years after his first killing. He confessed to all 10 murders in chilling clinical detail. He is currently serving 10 consecutive life sentences. For decades, he was one of the most wanted and most mysterious criminals in American history. Between 1974 and 1986, a man committed at least 13 murders, 50 rapes, and over 100 burglaries across the state of California. He operated under multiple names: the Visalia Ransacker, the East Area Rapist, the original Night Stalker. Eventually, investigators would link them all together under one name: the Golden State Killer. He was methodical, terrifyingly so. The Golden State Killer didn't act on impulse. He stalked his victims first, sometimes for weeks. He would call their homes and hang up. He would move objects in their yards to see if they noticed. He studied their routines. He attacked at night, almost always entering through an unlocked door or window. He was physically fit, fast, and almost always wore gloves. For over 40 years, he left virtually no useful evidence. The case went cold, investigators retired, victims grew old, carrying their trauma with them. And then came DNA genealogy. In 2018, investigators uploaded the Golden State Killer's DNA profile to a public genealogy database. By cross-referencing distant relatives, they were able to build a family tree and narrow the suspect list down to one man, Joseph James DeAngelo, a 72-year-old former police officer living in a suburb of Sacramento. He was arrested after investigators secretly collected DNA from items he had discarded, confirming the match. In 2020, DeAngelo pleaded guilty to 13 murders and admitted to dozens of other crimes. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. After more than 40 years, justice was finally served. But for the victims who didn't live to see it, it came far too late. Most people know Jack the Ripper. Far fewer know about the killer who may have inspired him, a murderer who struck nearly 5 years earlier in Austin, Texas. In 1884 and 1885, a killer attacked and murdered 8 people in the city of Austin. Mostly women, mostly servants, mostly in the early hours of the morning. He was never caught, and over a century later, criminologists still debate who he was. The attacks were savage and clearly premeditated. The killer would enter homes in the dead of night, drag victims outside, and kill them with a long, sharp instrument, possibly an axe or a similar weapon. What shocked investigators at the time was the brazenness. He struck in different parts of the city. He left almost no witnesses. And despite several suspects, including a cook named Nathan Elgin, who was killed by police under ambiguous circumstances, no one was ever officially charged. Here's where the story takes a strange turn. In 1888, Jack the Ripper began his series of murders in Whitechapel, London. A journalist at the time noted the similarities to the Austin killings and raised the possibility of a connection. In recent years, some researchers have proposed that a ship called the Majestic, which traveled between Galveston and Liverpool, could have carried a suspect from Austin to London in the time between the killings. It's a theory, not a fact, but it's a thread that has never been fully unraveled. The servant girl annihilator remains one of the oldest and most overlooked unsolved murder cases in American history. 5 cases, 5 stories of darkness, obsession, and unanswered questions. Some of these cases were eventually solved, decades later. Some remain open to this day. All of them remind us of something deeply uncomfortable, that evil doesn't always look the way we expect it to. It lives next door. It sits in church. It wears a uniform. If there's one thing true crime teaches us, it's that the truth has a way of eventually surfacing. Sometimes it takes years, sometimes decades. Sometimes it takes a single piece of digital metadata on a floppy disk. If you found this video interesting, please leave a comment below. Which case disturbed you the most? And subscribe if you haven't already. We release new deep dives every week on history, science, and the darker corners of human nature. I'll see you in the next one.